Brandon Weber, thanks for a $5 super chat. I've designed a 5-inch frame to be 3D printed. You've wasted your time and ruined your life. This was a huge mistake, and now you've admitted it in public. I've always wondered why this isn't done. Well, you're about to find out. Other than the obvious, is there a reason this wouldn't work? Oh. So, Brandon, let me start by not being a hater. Too late. I was already a hater. Brandon, follow your dreams. Right? Never let people tell you that what you want to do can't be done. And if you have a passion for something, then even if it's a waste of time because you'll fail in the end, just do it because you have a passion for it. So many times I have worked with people on projects, and you start working on the project and you realize it's not going to work. And then you pivot to a different direction and you realize it's not going to work. And then you pivot to a different direction and you realize it's not going to work. And eventually something that you're doing works. And all of the things you did leading up to that, a lot of times they contribute in some way. Whether it's a tool that you developed that turns out to not be useful how you intended, but it's useful in some other way, or whether it's just the lessons that you learned from failing. So I'm going to tell you the reason this is a terrible idea and it's not going to work. But I don't want that to sound like I'm saying, don't do it. Especially if you're happy doing it and you love doing it. If you like designing frames and you want to design a 3D printed frame, do it. Because the number one thing the world needs is people who are doing something that they're passionate about and excited about and interested in, and you're just gonna, not only will you be a better person and a happier person, you will also probably be more successful in the long run versus if you just was like, I don't know, Bardwell said this is a bad idea, I guess I won't do it. Okay, so with that all out of the way, the reason 5-inch frames are bad for 3D printing is that the materials commonly used to 3D print frames, especially if we're talking about FDM printers, which I assume that we are, all of those materials do not have the right combination of strength, stiffness, and lightweight to function well as a quadcopter frame. In order to get sufficient durability, they have to be heavy. They often don't have enough stiffness, and you end up with resonance problems. A lot of the time, people try to emulate a carbon fiber frame by 3D printing plastic sheets, and that just doesn't work because it's way too floppy. And then I've seen people who do 3D printed frames where the 3D printed frame is this carefully designed shell. And that's really how you'd have to do it. Carbon fiber is very good at being a stiff, strong sheet, right? Well, carbon fiber is also very good at being molded into shapes, but it's very expensive. So the big advantage of 3D printing is that you can print in almost arbitrary shapes, and you can optimize the design. And somebody once sent me a 5-inch quadcopter frame that they had optimized with, like, computers. And they were like, this is the best balance of strength and weight, and you could never do this with carbon. And I was like, okay. And then I flew it and I crashed it and it broke. Because everything breaks when you crash it at 70 miles an hour. Carbon fiber breaks when you crash it at 70 miles an hour. The point is that when it breaks, how much abuse can it take till it breaks? And then more importantly, when it breaks, how easy is it to repair? And if you've got this custom printed carbon fiber shell tube thing, I'm not carbon fiber, 3D printed carbon fiber, I've gotten too excited. I can't talk. If you've got this custom 3D printed shell, then you can't repair it when it breaks. You have to just replace the whole thing. And that's a pain in the ass. So it just turns out that for quadcopter frames, above certainly 5 inches, Maybe down in the 3-inch toothpick range, you could 3D print them. And certainly I know people have 3D printed tiny whoop frames. It just turns out that carbon fiber is the absolute perfect combination of strength, stiffness, lightness, durability. It just is the miracle material for this application. And maintainability. Because with carbon fiber sheets, when something breaks, you just open it up, you take it out, you replace the arm that broke, etc. But then you can just print another one. Yeah, but then you have to, in order to get a really strong 3D printed frame, and I say this as someone, people semi-regularly tell me that I'm wrong about this and offer to send me a 3D printed frame. And they ask me to test it, and then I test it, and then I find out that I was right, and it breaks. So I'm not just talking out my ass here. I have tested these. In order to get the strongest ones that I've used have been basically one piece. And then as soon as it breaks, you can print another one, but you have to move all your electronics. What a pain in the ass. You have to rebuild your whole quadcopter every time you break an arm. No, what a nightmare. Just use carbon. So, Brandon Weber, if you do go this direction, you have to be looking at more exotic materials like Nylon X. If you're trying to print it out of PLA or PETG, it will probably fly if you're half decent at designing it and you don't just design it as a sheet. It will probably fly, but then as soon as you crash it, it's just going to explode. And if you're like, oh, I'll just build another one. Sure, okay, you're only out the cost of your filament and your time. But also, you're going to be tearing up motors. You're going to be damaging your electronics. You're going to spend a lot of money. So, that's my take on that. If you really go that direction, look at exotic filament. The best one I ever saw was made out of Nylon X. And it was pretty durable and pretty strong. My only complaint about the Nylon X frame was that it was a completely encased shell, and in order to maintain the quad, you basically had to gut the whole thing. This is the closest I ever saw somebody go. Alrighty. Yeah, here's some cute. So here's where 3D printing starts to become semi-viable. This, I'm guessing, is a 3-inch or a 4-inch. What size frame is this? Uber Nero. What size frame is that? A 3-inch? Like, at this size and weight, 3D printing sort of becomes viable. It's a 3-inch nano long range. Carbon is still better, but it becomes semi-viable.